What we're here to do in the Academy is to learn, to have fun, and to make a difference. Today's unit, and the unit we'll be going over for the next 10 working days, is on the System of Profound Knowledge overview, the 14 points, and project initiation. Typically, each day prior to our next morning session, you'll receive an email from me with attachments that include our slides for the next session, additional files, if any, that we'll use during our session for that day's homework, a link to our morning's video on the IQI Academy YouTube website. The video links are always private, meaning, or unlisted, meaning that if you go to look for the IQI Academy listings, they won't show up because I don't make them public. They're just for our use. You have a copy of the Teach to Learn notes file. Please just reuse the blank one, update the date. I use the date to track submissions. And then you also, for today, have a 14 points and System of Profound Knowledge handout and the Deming bio and timeline. Do you guys have these things in hand?
I didn't print them out.
You don't need to print them out. However, it might be easier, especially for the 14 points applied that I'm showing you on the screen, this form. We're going to be going through the 14 points from Deming today, and I'm going to ask you to make notes as part of what you submit. You're going to address 3 of the 14 points that you think are critical to your project or important to your project. You can have a notepad today. That will suffice, because you can certainly make notes about each of the 14 points while we're watching the video. It's just that when you submit your form, I'd like you to submit the document itself that I've sent you. Mostly, it's good practice to have those things available when you log in, available to open on your screen. So sometimes you might want to make notes on some of these things. Certainly, as a practice, please review the slides for the next day. You may arrive with questions about what we're talking about, and it's better to have thought about some of those questions than it is to make them up in the moment, although certainly we'll address those as they arise. The other thing to note here is the file format. This file format that we have here, when you receive a file from me, please only use or substitute your last name. Don't use any first initials, please. And whatever dates are here, and please use the 4-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit date in this exact sequence if you're updating the dates on any of the files that you turn in. This makes it easier to sort sequentially when you pull it up on any file like Google Drive or the folders in Windows, that sort of thing. I think that's sufficient for that. Any questions on saving file names? No, I think we're good. And then at the start of each session, you'll see this slide in your handouts as well. I go over the learning activities that were completed the day before. In this case, you've completed the entire checklist, which means you've submitted a whole lot of work already. And I will show the key concept that you'll be learning about. And then also the key concept is what you'll be using in your Teach to Learn conversations. You'll be doing Teach to Learn conversations following each day's session. And we'll talk a little bit about how to be more successful about completing that kind of work. And then we'll also get some version of a preview of the day's activities or assignments. So for instance, today, you'll want to begin to schedule your Teach to Learn conversations for the entire unit. The requirement is 7 to 10 different people, and at least 7 of them should be in your workplace. So you can have 3 people from outside the workplace that you can talk to. That would include family is fine. friends, people in other businesses, if you interact with other customers or suppliers, or even people that you do business with, your banker, your investor, your plumber, whoever that is that you want to talk to, you can have a conversation like that. And then please plan on testing at least one move per week for your project. We'll get into exactly how to structure that around plan, do, study, act cycles. But for this week, we're just talking about making a move to produce some kind of improvement. The anticipation is that you'll produce nearly 11 or 12 of these for the entire academy. Okay. Any questions on this stuff right now? Feel free. So that the preference that I have is let's talk about it during our session. So during the day, you don't run into something and wonder, well, what was Eric talking about? So if it's not clear, and frequently I probably won't be clear because I make an assumption that you're going to know what I'm saying, and that's not always the case. Sometimes I say stuff that people have no idea what's coming out of my mouth. So stop me, and then we can certainly have a conversation about it. Just briefly, I'm guessing you guys probably don't know each other real well. Is that the case?
No, we work at different sites.
Yeah, I thought so. So I'm just going to go alphabetically by last name. I'd like you to introduce yourself. I put location in because we're all LabCorp in this academy. And then your organizational role, and then the project you selected. Just say a couple things about that. So Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Matt Clark. I am a research assistant here at LabCorp. Are we going into anything outside the company or?
No, that's fine. Just what's on the screen is fine.
Okay. Yeah, so I work here in Ann Arbor. My organization role is obviously a research assistant. And the project that I selected was to try to move a computer into the area of where we do all of our checking our samples after we sample from mice. And so a lot of times there have been some errors being produced because just the way that we've been doing it have been on paper. So I want to try to be able to get a computer there so we can just do it all in the system without having the errors created from everything being put down on paper.
Do you remember what your answer to question number 1 for your 3 basic questions was?
Let me check. Of course, I can pull it up real quick. Apologize.
No problem. Here, I'll pull it up. I found it. So.
Oh yeah, I got it. So I just had put to decrease the number of errors that are occurring with the sample verification. I guess I didn't go into too much detail on that, but.
So that's great. This doesn't have any how-to about it. So your first description of your project was move a computer. That's actually, that shows up in your answer to question number 3, what moves can you make, which is really appropriate. Okay. So continue thinking about your project in this terms, decrease the number of errors that occur, because there may be other things you could do to decrease errors and not simply attack it from the instance of, I've got a solution I'm going to implement. So remember, we're doing a learning project, not an implementation project. Okay. So just think of it that way, and it might be beneficial as you approach your project to keep continuing. That's just one possible move. And because it involves IT, that's why it gets a negative score on your criteria worksheet. Because typically IT is a tough department to involve in projects. They have a lot of priorities, including whatever daily disaster they're running into, at the time. Okay. All right, Ben, tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah, so I'm Ben Scroggins. I work here in the Greenfield, Indiana site for LabCorp, so a little bit more south than most people who take this course. I'm a supervisor for the In-Life Oncology team here. So our organization looks a little bit different than the Ann Arbor site. But my project is around our room organization.
Mm-hmm.
So we're one little team in a pretty large lab. So we have a lot of spaces kind of spread out through everybody else. We're all mixed in. I have a lot of rooms that are half full. I have a lot of rooms that are at capacity. I have different levels of cleanliness for each room, so the workflow, has to move in one direction. It's all pretty poorly defined and organized right now. So my project was to better define the workflow, figure out a better organizational system, and then implement it.
That's a lot of stuff that you've got going on there. That's a great project. So there's a couple things that you have to think about. You described two of them. One is workflow itself. So have you ever used a chart called a spaghetti chart or a spaghetti diagram?
Nope.
So we'll learn about that, make a note about that. And next time, if we want to meet during office hours, we can have a little more in-depth conversation about that. And the other is, I think I mentioned in the feedback is, let's talk about diagramming the layout of what it is you're talking about, both the room and the equipment. Because one of your first moves might be a prototype of some sort, a new layout on paper that you can have, or you might even involve other people in helping produce those layouts. And we can talk about that as well. So there's engagement with a lot of people that is possible in your project. It's ideal, both Matt and Ben, to have other people engaged in your work, because that gives you a lot more practice around what it takes to produce some version of improvement in an organization. At your desk, it's one thing. When you're involving other people, it's something completely different. And I'm sure you guys both know this, like trying to get other people on board is not always the easiest thing to do. All right, I'm going to move on. My request is that when you participate in the academy, you arrive to all sessions and complete all coursework on time. You've done that already. It's not that I'm asking you to do this because you've missed the boat on this. But I want to ask: do you accept that request, Matt?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and Ben.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an easy one, really. And then the other thing, additional request, is that when you make a choice that will cause you to not keep any of these previous agreements, you'll communicate that choice before you've missed the commitment. So, Matt, do you accept that request?
I do, yeah.
Hey, Ben.
Yep.
Yeah, that's easy. So, it's like Andrea this morning. She woke up and realized she was in no shape to participate. She sent me an email right away, which is really nice. Because when you're not feeling well, one of the last things you want to do is actually, get on some kind of device and let people know. But she did that, so that's appreciated, and that's the kind of thing that we look for. Is you're going to be in communication about your commitments before, if you're going to miss some commitment, before you miss them. I don't see that as a problem with this group, but it's just a commitment we ask people to make. So thanks for doing that. I'm going to move into some of the material. Over 35 years ago, Deming identified 7 deadly diseases of management that continue to afflict us today. These are the labels, and these came from his book, Out of the Crisis. He labeled constancy, lack of constancy of purpose, emphasis on short-term profits, evaluation of performance, merit rating or annual review, mobility of management by the use of visible figures only, excessive medical costs, and excessive costs of liability. He described these all as deadly diseases of management. Now, when we go through the 14 points today, you'll see a relationship between the things he describes as things we should be doing and some of these deadly diseases. Have you guys seen these before in any form? So this is new. Is there any thought, this is, since they're brand new, off the top of your head as to why they might be described as a deadly disease?
But I think they could, like, for example, the emphasis on short-term profits. Of course, it looks good now, but it's not, it could lead to a lot of shortcomings later.
Yes, oftentimes short-term can even mean monthly. And so if people are trying to hit monthly figures, we do things to distort the system and processes just to make sure we hit a target for this short term, but maybe costing ourselves down the road. Yep. What else? Anything else, Ben?
Well, remembering the New Economics book talked a lot about that evaluation of performance and merit rating annual review point. So I guess I would just reflect back on that and think about how grading individuals just ignores the system.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably the biggest emphasis on that. There's some psychological impacts of being rated for the performance of the system. It's demoralizing, but also the fact that we're actually probably more doing evaluation of what the system is doing rather than individuals are doing. And we'll learn much more about that as we continue on, but that's certainly going to be a point for us to recall and remember. Deming was asked toward the end of his life how he had wished to be remembered in the U.S., and he replied, I probably won't even be remembered. And then after a pause, he added, well, maybe as someone who spent his life trying to keep America from committing suicide. So I can, depending on your perspective from his day till today, you might argue that we're not in much better shape business-wise, economically, commercially, than we were in that day. And so you might have a point about trying to help us, keep our head above water. Now, survival, he said, is not mandatory. The average lifespan of a business varies by region, but the question of corporate survival has become top in the mind as companies grapple with how to move forward in an increasingly challenging business environment. Credit Suisse has shown that the average age of a company listed on the S&P 500 fell from almost 60 years in the 1950s to less than 20 years today. About 1/3 of new U.S. businesses do not make it past their second year, and half are gone after 5 years. And while the full impact of the COVID crisis may not be known for years, estimates of daily business closures in 2021 range from 500 a day to 1,500 a day. Worthwhile approaches to management and improvement must include attention to fiscal responsibility and keeping the lights on, while at the same time, it is vital we create organizations in which our own humanity is recognized, in which we're able to work with joy and well-being. To be able to produce both outcomes can be seen as a delicate balancing act. And the management methods we'll be learning from Deming and throughout the Academy are unique in their ability to balance the needs of the business with the aspirations of individuals impacted by the organization. One of the challenges we face is the desire for immediate results, the desire for instant pudding, as Deming described it. To achieve this balance, the aim proposed here for any organization is for everybody to gain: stockholders, employees, suppliers, customers, community, the environment over the long term. I find it fascinating that in the 1990s, Deming was one of the few management gurus that was addressing the environment as something that should be considered as part of our organization's aims. So you've been introduced to the system of profound knowledge through your readings in the New Economics. Deming wrote the 14 points for management in industry, education, and government follow naturally as an application of this outside knowledge via the system of profound knowledge for transformation from the present style of Western management to one of optimization. So please keep your project in mind as you listen to and record ideas or insights about each of the 14 points. Now, let me ask you, I've talked a little bit longer than I intended to about some of your introductory work. Do you guys have a few more minutes than 8:45 to go to? I mean, can we go a little long? Ben, you said yes. Matt, you're okay? Okay. So just in case we go long, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We might be doing that. So again, please have some place to record your notes or ideas about each of the 14 points. I'd like you to record one insight or idea that you get from each of the 14 points. And for reference, you have the handout that lists the 14 points, so you can actually go back and look at them as you make additional notes. And then you're going to identify at least 3 of the 14 points that could most impact your project that you selected. So, and for these 3 points, so it's only for these 3 points, it's not for all 14. I'd like you to address columns A, B, and C. What does the point you've chosen mean to you? How might that point apply to your project? And how could you explain their relevance to your teammates and managers? So does that make sense? You're going to make some kind of note or idea about each of the 14 points, but then out of 3 of those, you're going to address the other 3 columns. You're going to fill those out. And you're just going to do your best about how this applies. There's no right or wrong about how these points could apply to your project. Okay. All right, so we have a video we're going to watch, and then we have a few more things to wrap up after the video is complete.
W. Edwards Deming changed our world. Until his death in December 1993, he worked as a revolutionary, insisting that we change, that we do everything better. People who may never have heard his name owe, or soon will owe, their improved health care, education, consumer product, satisfaction, even government, to Deming's ability to ask apparently simple questions.
What business are we in? What business ought we be in? Is anybody here not putting forth his best efforts? Has the system of reward in Ford made it difficult in the past for people to work together? What will we be doing a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What would you mean by improvement? What do you mean by a good job?
The object of those simple questions, asked at his seminars, in his books and video cassettes, was to force people to think differently, to break out of traditional patterns. He had started doing that in the summer of 1950, when the Japanese asked his help to rebuild a war-shattered economy. American industry didn't need any help then. With mass production, American goods flooded the world.
We were doing so well. This country made notable contribution to the world, mass production.
By the early 1980s, cars and consumer goods from Japan were flooding back into the United States. The quality method Deming had taught the Japanese after the war now produced not just a lot, but a lot that was better and cost less.
The problem now is not mass production. The problem is quality.
Dr. Deming's teaching is best understood through his 14 points, which he developed in the late 1970s. When used together, they represent a philosophy of life.
The 14 points all have one aim: make it possible for people to work with joy. How can they work with joy if the company has no constancy of purpose, has no purpose in life? How could anyone enjoy his work? Wouldn't know what he was doing. The first point is create constancy of purpose for the improvement of product and service.
I think it's extraordinarily important for us to have an overall strategic plan, a vision, if you will, a general understanding of who and what do we want to do in this country. What are our national interests? What do we believe in? What do we want for our children and our grandchildren? Where would we like to be in 100 years?
The idea is to have a long-term aim, something that everyone in the organization knows and understands. You have to answer the questions. What are we doing? Why are we doing it?
Second point is to learn the new philosophy. Teach it to employees, to customers, to suppliers. Put it into practice, in other words. The new philosophy, which is one of cooperation, win-win, everybody wins.
Cooperation to everyone's benefit is a key point in Dr. Deming's philosophy. One of his favorite illustrations of that new philosophy is two service stations in his neighborhood that compete and simultaneously cooperate. He called one of them when his automobile wouldn't start.
Man came to take care of that automobile in a truck of his competitor across the street. Now they're smart. Instead of both of them owning two trucks, borrow each other's on emergency. They still compete on their gasolines and service. Third point is cease dependence on mass inspection. It's much better to improve the process in the first place so that you don't produce so many defective items or none at all.
It takes the same time, material, and effort to lay a bad egg as a good one. The only difference is you can't sell the bad one.
Fourth point is end the practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag alone. Instead, minimize total cost in the long run. That means one has to predict the cost of use of any product or service.
Overall costs includes a whole lot of things, including the life cycle costs of something. That means everything from the purchase of it through the maintenance phase.
The idea is to buy from a single supplier, always working with that supplier to increase his quality and decrease his cost so that he can help you do the same. Again, it's a win-win situation.
The fifth point is to improve constantly every process for planning, production, service, whatever the activity is.
It was continuous improvement that allowed the Japanese to create an advantage over the American industry. Never-ending improvement.
All inventions exist because someone believed something could be done better. You must accept that nothing is ever good enough.
Sixth is institute training for skills. The people learn in different ways, and training must take account of those differences.
People are the only ones that can create change. People with more knowledge and them growing are the only ones that can create continuous improvement.
Even those people with an apparent innate ability to do something well can be trained to do it better. Juggling for improvement, you might say.
Seventh is adopt and institute principles for the management of people I'm referring to management of people for recognition of different abilities, capabilities, aspirations. One cannot delegate quality. The president of a company may delegate quality to his plant managers. That's not a way to get quality. That's a road to failure.
What is required is leadership, not supervision, leadership. Quality and ethics exist in those organizations where everyone is in tune and the most senior person will accept nothing less.
Point 8 is to drive out fear, build trust. It's purely a matter of management.
To lead a company focused on improvement requires a whole different sets of values and attitudes and relationships than leading an organization based on control.
The idea of strict control is directly opposite what Dr. Deming teaches, which is cooperation throughout the company at every level by people who have concern and respect for each other.
Ninth is break down barriers between staff areas. In other words, build a system. Build a system within your own organization for win-win. Everybody win. This means cooperation. It means abolishment of competition.
Remember that everything is a system, and the system must be organized for the best possible performance, not by one part of the system or by one person, but by them all. The idea is not competition, but contribution. Every part of the system, every person in it, will win if the system wins.
Point 10 is eliminate slogans, exhortations, targets, asking for zero defects, new levels of productivity. Nonsense. You don't need a method. Why weren't you doing it last year? Only one possible answer, you were goofing off.
Think of it this way. If a snappy slogan actually accomplished anything, advertising copywriters would rule the world.
Eleven is eliminate numerical goals, numerical quotas for anybody. A numerical goal or quota accomplishes nothing.
Of the 14 points, this is perhaps the easiest to understand if you will remember the Fats Waller classic, "Tain't what you do, it's the way that you do it." Or in Dr. Deming's words, by what method?
In my class at New York University, Christine, Dr. Deming, I work for an airline, information and reservations. My job is to give satisfaction to the caller and to make 25 calls per hour. Christine, said I, what is your job? You don't know what your job is. Is it to give satisfaction to the caller or is it to make 25 calls per hour? Christine, you can do either one, but not both, except by coincidence, I would not expect. She said, I know it, that's why I bring it up. I don't have a job, I don't know what it is. Which is it, to make 25 calls per hour or to give satisfaction to the caller? Which is it? She doesn't know. Need we manage that way? Why not improve? That will not bring improvement. She cut people off to make her 25 calls per hour. Twelfth point is remove barriers that rob people of joy in their work. This will mean abolish the annual rating or merit system, which ranks people, creates competition, conflict.
What gives me the right to tell you that you're in the lower 25%. Does that make you feel good? Does that make you think you're going to do better in the future? I think probably it just makes you feel bad and you'd want to do something else.
I do not grade my students. How can I know how somebody will do 10 years from now under economic, financial, psychological conditions that nobody can foretell? Nobody would dare to foretell.
You cannot enjoy what you do if you are doing it only to beat someone else. If you cannot find joy in doing the job itself, you cannot contribute to a quality organization.
Point 13 is institute a vigorous program of education on self-improvement.
Training, of course, tells you how, and education tells you why. And that's a subtle thing, but it's important.
Don't confuse training, point 6, with education, point 13. Education should not be about your job, but about something else. Sometimes, no matter how well you hold up your end, you have to think of other things in other ways.
And 14, the last point is accomplish the transformation. Let us continue to study the new philosophy. Develop a critical mass in your organization that will bring about the transformation.
You have to get everybody committed and everybody using their knowledge together, as opposed to just a few people telling people what to do. And so I believe that, and plus I'm not smart enough to be able to have all the answers. I can't go back.
Those who teach the Deming method argue that it does most to integrate work and people, that it is a complete philosophy. Dr. Deming's method is based on what he called profound knowledge, most of which is theoretical. Theory of a system, of education, of variation, and psychology. The good news is you don't have to be an expert, you only have to be aware of them. But in a nation of people impatient to get everything done quickly, his method takes time, a lot of time.
I thought we could really institute things quickly, that it would just be a matter of months before we could change policies and change attitudes. Not so. It takes years.
I would say the quality improvement process is not difficult to accept. I would say it's something very new. It's a new way of thinking.
There's a lot there. Some of it's quick, challenging to absorb. Some of it's not so challenging. What are your thoughts after going through this for the first time?
I think there's definitely a lot there. I think books could be written about each point, but the one that stood out to me was number 11, removing numerical goals. Because I feel like most of our stuff is setting those goals for individuals.
Say again, so why does that stand out for you?
I mean, a large part of my job is defining what proficiency is in each of our techniques in the lab. So it is setting numerical goals for each person, just timing metrics, deciding how long this task should take them and planning around that. So that would be a scary one to kind of rethink and remove numerical goals.
So in the discussion, it was short, but the discussion about numerical goals, what did he have as an alternative? What should the approach? Well, first of all, what did he say the problem with a goal is? The numerical goal.
It removes the focus from quality.
It does remove the focus because now your focus is on the number. The other thing that happens is the goal doesn't improve anything. And he made a comment, if a goal actually improves something, his question was, well, why weren't you doing it last year? If all it took was to have a goal. So what has to take place? So there's something else that has to take place in order to achieve that goal. What has to take place?
remembered.
So you're kind of describing it when you talk about what you're trying to train the folks that you're working with. It's how to do something. So you need a method by which to achieve that goal. So the important part is not the goal itself, but it's what's the improvement of the method that's going to produce that improved result. You can still use numbers to evaluate, hey, are we getting better? He's not saying don't ever do that. But he did say, if all you're doing is giving people targets and goals to achieve and not telling them by what method, you're going to get all sorts of different results and maybe make things worse. So that's actually a good one to say. That's an important point. Matt, what'd you think about the 14 points?
It was excuse me. It was definitely a lot to take in.
Yes.
I was trying to scribble down notes for each one. I did like the number 9, breaking down barriers. Finding that good balance and trying to abolish the competition and being able to work with, like in where we work at, there's other teams doing other studies, being able to break down, keeping it teams, but being able to outsource to other teams if you need help or something like that, would be really good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The breaking down barriers, one of the questions that we want to ask ourselves is, well, what put those barriers there in the first place? And you mentioned one of them, competition. So if there's competition in any fashion, it starts to generate a barrier between teams or individuals. If I'm competing with your team for a resource, a scarce resource, then all of a sudden there's a barrier between us and them. And so there's other things that generate barriers. We want to keep those in mind when we think about breaking down barriers. So that's an important aspect of doing that as well. What's the source of the barriers? If we're going to begin breaking those down, what can we do to address the sources of those barriers? Well, this is good. And please continue using your handouts as well as you note the ideas. So, you're going to capture ideas kind of like the ones on the screen. This Brian from a previous academy listed a few things here as his ideas, as well as here's examples for that he used as saying, why is this, meaningful to you? How does it apply to your project? And how would you explain its relevance to your team members or management? So that's your assignment for today, is fill out this form completely. Now, I do offer office hours as optional. I don't have anything on the schedule. If there's office hours you'd like to hold, let me know. We can set them up today. Other options for having conversations with me include, hey, Eric, can we stick around for a few minutes after class? If you have a question in mind, I'm glad to hang around after our session and have a conversation. I do that frequently with people. Or if something comes up, text me. That's probably the best way, and ask, hey, can we set, I've run into a problem. Can we have a call here in a little bit? So either way, I don't know if you guys have anything in mind right now where you're saying, oops, let me go back. Do you want to meet? Is there anything that you have in mind that you want to meet about? Or let's continue playing it by ear. What are your thoughts?
I think, playing it by ear would be something to establish. I guess I wouldn't really know any sort of office hours right now, especially since I don't really have any questions at this time. So I guess if something comes up, it would be good to just play it by ear.
Okay. Ben, your thoughts?
That works for me too.
Same thing. Yeah. I'm pretty flexible. And like I said, we can always just stick around and have a longer conversation after class if something needs to be. So here's a hint. If you'd like to complete your academy experience with ease and a lack of suffering, schedule your work with appointments in your calendar. Don't think that things are going to just happen by themselves, and you're going to be able to get work done without some kind of appointment for yourself. Either get some work with or with others for your teach to learn conversations. Assignments are due by 6 p.m. each day. Complete your teach to learn conversation and submit that document focusing on what you learned, not what you taught. Okay, that's the emphasis that we're looking for in the teach to learn conversations. What is it you learned by trying to teach that concept, whatever that daily concept is? You don't even need to know all the concepts are going to be taught to make your appointments with people. You can go right ahead and schedule your teach to learn conversations with people today if you wanted to for the rest of Unit 1. And then you'll have people set aside to talk with. Again, 7 to 10 different people, and plan on testing at least one move per week, 11 or 12 for the Academy. I'm going to ask you to do a deployment flow chart. So if you look at the New Economics Figure 4, it describes the sending out of a request for donations for a particular charity. I don't know if you remember that, but it's basically your swim lane chart. What's the steps in the process, and then who's doing the steps? And only 5 to 7 steps. I don't want you to have a lot of detail in your deployment flow chart regarding the project idea that you selected. And it's important to have some version of a diagram that lets you see what this process looks like. And we could talk, it often provides an idea for moves as well. You can move something from one location to another, from one person to another, or a step before or after another step is also a move. Today's concept to teach is the 14 points. You don't have to teach all of them to somebody. Ben, like you picked out the one about numerical goals. You might want to teach that in your teach to learn conversation. Or you might decide, both of you might decide, I'm going to share the 3 that I picked that relate to my project. That might be an easy way to have a deeper conversation about, hey, do I really understand this? One of the reasons we do teach to learn is that you run into this idea of explanatory depth. I think I get it. And then I try to tell somebody about it and I realize I really don't understand it as well as I thought I understood it. So that's what you want to run into, is like the limits of your knowledge. And then you go back and say, oh, I need to learn some more so I can really understand this better. And you've run into that already. I know when you're talking about the new economics to people, it's like, I thought I knew this topic, but oops, maybe I didn't understand it quite as well as I thought I did. So identify one thing to move, and we'll talk more about what's an appropriate move. I forget which one of you I sent back. This is a move and this is not a move in your feedback. Ben, was it your stuff or Matt, your stuff? I forget that. In your response to question number 3, I listed, here's all the things that are a move. One of you sent me back an email with responses to my feedback.
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, so if you look at what I said about question number 3, the things that I said, this is not a move, but this is a move. You might look at that and understand better about what we're talking about when we say move something. So it's not an intention, it's actually physically moving something physical. It could be moving logically a step of a process. It could be handing authority to somebody else, so moving authority from one level to another. There's lots of different things that we could think about moving. Putting something on your calendar is a move. Putting different people in a meeting, like new people, is moving people to participate. So you want to expand your idea about, well, what could a move entail, okay? And then your deployment flow chart, 5 to 9 steps, somewhere in there. And again, if you want your Academy experience, to be completed with ease and a lack of suffering, schedule your work with appointments on your calendar. And so right now, I'm just going to ask you, do you guys have appointments on your calendars today for any of the work that you're expecting to do?
Nope.
I've made appointments for these meetings.
Yeah, that's a start, right? Yeah, so you know that at least we're going to show up here. So that's one way to make sure that you're going to be here is it's on your calendar. So that's a good example of, hey, I'm going to participate in this. You want the same thing to show up for your homework too. You don't want to be scrambling at the end of the day trying to figure out who am I going to talk to about my teach to learn conversation, that sort of thing. So those are going to be daily. I highly recommend setting aside some time to put your ideas together and then talk about what you want to with other people. I have had people in previous academies actually teach the lesson that we went through to somebody else. So they've used the slides when we do an exercise. Sometimes they do the exercise with their partner. So there's a variety of ways you can actually do teaching, and then again, focus on what it is you're learning by doing that. But having that in your calendar, some kind of session set aside, an appointment set aside to have a conversation with people will make life a lot easier and less stressful. And then we're going to talk about mind maps in the next day or two. And mind mapping will be an ongoing assignment. We don't have a section in the academy for teaching theory of knowledge, even though it's one of the 4 areas of profound knowledge. Our mind map is the only way we begin to address theory of knowledge. So we use, I provide quotes each day, 2 of them each day, that you can add to your theory of knowledge mind map. These are quotes you're going to hang on to for now. And in a couple of days, you'll add those to your theory of knowledge mind map when we look at what that looks like, what that structure is. But for today, here's a couple of quotes that'll just be useful to keep in mind when we talk about learning. Kurt Lewin said, if you want truly to understand something, try to change it. And being on the court produces learning experiences, while remaining in the stands creates onlookers. That's the intention of the IQI Academy is, and you guys have already made comments about, there's a real difference between being in the stands versus on the court. So your project is intended to put you on the court immediately. Okay, so you're on the court with your project, trying to make improvements in your organization. You're on the court having conversations, because one of the things you're doing in the organization when you're having conversations is there's you, there's the person, then there's the in-between. And you're actually on the court altering that in-between when you start having conversations with people about topics that you normally wouldn't talk to them about. So there's on the court in a variety of different fashions that you can explore. And ultimately, even though Deming doesn't list it this way, the integration of all 4 areas of profound knowledge results in transformation of some sort. We're looking for transformation sourced by the individual and then ultimately the organization. And you're playing a role in that. I got to ask you, did either one of you get asked by previous participants to participate in Teach to Learn conversations?
Yeah. I couldn't get away from Scott.
Scott probably picked on you a lot, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt, you're saying nobody came to you and asked you to talk with them?
No.
I got it. Well, this will be a new experience for you. That'll be good. And Ben, I don't know if that was a good experience or bad experience for you as you dealt with Scott. Certainly the intention is to have fun for both of you when you have these conversations. So, and I have to say, Scott was one of our better participants. He certainly was inquisitive and he was trying to learn. So I appreciate his efforts at doing that. So I encourage you to do your best to learn while you're teaching and spend time focusing on how's that impacting you by trying to teach these concepts. And we're starting off with a big one. 14 points is a challenging one to address. And so you're kind of getting tossed in the deep end right away. So, all right, so that's it for today.